Hello, dear listener. It's Tuesday, it's 10 o'clock, and it's not Crackerjack, it's the Tuesday show. We're here again, and we're just going to have a little chat this evening about anything you like in the news, but we've chosen two topics to talk about in particular. One because we like it, and the other one because everybody else is talking about it, at least on my social media. So you choose, you join us, and we'll talk about the news in East London or that affects East London. So let me welcome, first of all, my guest. Abu Talha Chowdhury is with us. Abu, are you there? Yes, you are. Lovely. Hi, good to see you. I'm sure you're glad to be here too. Right. Abu is a hotshot economist. So originally I thought maybe we could talk about economic regeneration in East London. But in fact, we're going to leave that to one side. Abu is a hotshot economist, but he is here in a very personal capacity, and we're going to be talking about directly elected mayors. Did you know, dear listener, that there's going to be elections on the first Thursday in May, and I'm just trying to contact Abu now because I can't actually hear you. Abu, there's a theory that your sound may have gone, so I'm just talking generally about what we're going to be doing. Yes, did you know there's going to be a referendum in Tower Hamlets? There's going to be one in Newham on the first Thursday in May. It's alongside the GLA elections when we have the opportunity to re-elect the London mayor or elect a new one. And yes, that's right, directly elected mayors. So you can join us in having that conversation. You can ring us on 0208 12345 07. Abba, I think you need to fix your Bluetooth, whatever that is. Can you try saying something? I didn't know you had a Bluetooth, but there you are. How disappointing, because we were chatting for about 15 minutes before we came on air, and it was going so well. We could hear each other beautifully. And we've been having some real problems with sound over the last couple of weeks, and the internet being slow. So let me just fill you in. The first Thursday in May, I think it's the 6th of May, we're going to have elections for the London Mayor, the Greater London Assembly. Here in City and East, we have one member of the to represent us on the Greater London Assembly, and depending on how high the vote is, we may get extra members in the top-up section. Abu, are you with us now? Can you hear us? I'm not seeing much reaction from Abu. You can't hear us by the sound of it. Something's not working. Well, you can hear us. Can we hear you? Can you say something? Do you not want to say anything? Right, Abu, I'm going to ask you to leave the virtual studio and to join it again. And hopefully if you do that, follow the link, join up again. Hopefully if you do that, then you will actually recapture your sound. Okay, right, you're going to do that. You see, that's what happens when you invite hotshot economists onto your programme. They accept instructions like go away and come back. So we will, as I say, come back talking about directly elected mayors. It was an experiment introduced by Tony Blair. I'm sure there must be some good things that Tony Blair did. I'm very pushed to remember a single one of them, really. Directly elected mayor is a quaint system, very popular in the US, where it's prone to a great deal of corruption. Right. Abu, can you hear us now?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
There we are.
Yes. Right. Okay. So we're going to talk about the mayor. Now, there was a particular reason. It's not a great system, but there was a particular reason why we introduced a directly elected mayor in Tower Hamlets. Can you remember what that is, Abu?
I just felt there was this feeling amongst the community that they wanted the responsibility, the ability to vote for who the mayor is or who the leader of the council would be. And for a long time, you had councillors obviously being part of that process, and sort of deciding who the next leader of the local authority would be. But people just generally felt that, you know what, we need to bring the power from elected officials to the general mass. And I think it was 10 years ago, but it feels like, you know, yesterday that campaign started. And, you know, here we are again discussing the benefits and the criticisms of the system.
Indeed. So how do you think it went? When we had a mayor, I mean, there was one criticism of having a mayor is you got a situation of kind of dual power, because there was the people had elected the mayor, but if the majority of the council didn't support the mayor, you could get into problems. So how do you feel it actually went?
I'd say my personal opinion, I like the system because the mayor is accountable to the people. And if the people felt that the mayor wasn't doing a good job or they dislike some of the policies, then you get a turn to change the mayor every 4 years. So I felt, number one, it's more accountable. I felt sometimes a lot of good work is missed in the bureaucracy of things and just the system of keeping everyone on side. And where the mayor sort of is accountable to the people, essentially, if the people support the policies, the mayor has the mandate to go ahead, obviously with the support of the councillors, to implement the policies of the party or the independent mayor at one point. So I fully support the system, mainly on that front. The fact that, you know, people had involvement selecting who the mayor would be. It was quicker for the mayor, I guess, in a lot of cases, to get stuff done. And I'm someone of action more than speech, so I quite supported that.
I mean, it wasn't.
Reasons, but I'd say those two.
It wasn't a universally popular decision in Tower Hamlets, of course. I think when we go back to 2010, of course, it was May 2010 when the people decided in a referendum to change the system and have a directly elected mayor, and the first election was in the October, wasn't it? And I think the outcome of that election hit the Labour Party very hard. I think there was an assumption that Tower Hamlets, as an inner city borough, would always be Labour. It reminded me of 1986 quite a lot, when Labour walked confidently into the count at York Hall. They knew they were going to win, keep a Labour council, because that's what happened, and they lost. And the Liberal Democrats, in fact, took over for the following 4 years, which was followed by Labour coming back into the council at the count in 1990, confident they were going to take back the council because that was their right, or the way things happened. And again, they lost. The Lib Dems retained the council. They increased their majority. It wasn't until 1994 that Labour did earn the trust of the people again. So there we were in 1994. When it came to 2010, and we had the referendum, we decided to go to the mayor thing. Labour again was very upset. Why do you think that was? Why was it that people were not happy just to follow the Labour Party? I mean, you were not a member of the Labour Party, I don't think. You've ever been a member of the Labour Party. So you're not seeing it from the inside. So as an outsider, why do you think Labour sort of snapped and lost their mojo?
Are you questioning why people were split on the decision, or why Labour lost the election? Sorry, the referendum.
No, why did Labour lose the referendum? Why was it that people didn't support them?
I think the whole fiasco around sort of the selection of the candidate and, you know, what happened after that, I think had a big bearing on people's minds. I think that swayed a lot of people, in my opinion, and people felt there was a lot of injustice done against the candidate who was selected by the Labour Party, who was launched as the mayoral candidate, and then for some reasons, you know, deselected. I think the fiasco around that brought sympathy from people, but equally they felt the candidate was competent, someone who could represent them well, and someone who actually held true Labour values. So the candidate who eventually went on to become the mayor, we put aside all the sort of the other stories, but let's just say within mayor, the policies that he was able to put through, the very Labour kind of policies, and I think a lot of people did support him for that.
I think so too. I mean, I'm sure you remember that very first time when the English Defence League, the EDL, marched in Tower Hamlets, and the mayor came out, and it was like one of the biggest film stars on the planet had just come out on the streets, and the people who were out on the streets to say no to the EDL just marched so proudly. Again, that's something I've really not seen since 1994. And unfortunately, on that occasion, the Labour Party felt it was not right to come out, and it was not. One shouldn't give the EDL, the extreme right, the oxygen of publicity, which I think personally may have been the wrong call. So look, we're getting into territory here where we're sort of having a bit of a go at the Labour Party. It's not particularly our intention. So if you're a Labour Party supporter, ring in 0208 123. I can never remember this phone number. It's a really easy one. 0208 1234507. Ring in and defend Labour's position on being against the directly elected mayor back in 2010. We've had some comments come in on Facebook while we've been talking. That's why I was looking down. Naz says hello. So hello, Naz. Good to have you there.
Hello,
Naz has
Naz.
also said there should be a third option, because of course the referendum we're going to have this May says keep the directly elected mayor or change to a particular other system, and that system on the ballot paper will be having the councillors choose the leader and having the council run by a cabinet with a leader who is chosen by the councillors rather than by the actual people direct. So if you think that's a good position, then call in and argue your corner. Naz also says there should be no local politicians of any kind. He wants directly staff and residents to have a relationship, cut the bureaucracy and save loads of money. I don't know if I would agree with that, Naz, so come in and argue your case on that. But Shah Amin Hock asks us, what are the key pros and cons for having a directly elected mayor? You've given two key arguments in favour of having a directly elected mayor. What do you think the arguments are against having the leader plus cabinet model? Have you got a view on that, Taha?
Sorry, Jenny, I can't you there.
No, you're clicking. You're clicking and.
About the cons of the leadership system and the mayoral system.
What are the cons? Or the pros? Let's be the cons. What's the problems with the directly with the leader plus cabinet model? I think it you. Somebody. One of us is clicking and hissing. Is this your Bluetooth system?
It's not. Bluetooth is off.
Right. The clicking's gone away.
There somewhat.
Let's try again. What do you think?
Jenny, before the show started.
What do you think what are the disadvantages of the leader plus cabinet model?
I alluded to it before. So you're accountable to your councillors in essence. So the councillors who are selecting you, I think it will be in the back of your mind that you need to keep them happy.
Taha, we're really not hearing you clearly enough. Would you be able to go away again and to rejoin us actually from a laptop? And then maybe that device will come through more clearly, yeah? Thank you. Okay. I'm so sorry about this sound. I hadn't realised this was an issue. It was all working. We did have a technical rehearsal and that was all working very well. So we'll come back to when we get Taha back. Then we can talk more about the mayoral system. But in the meantime, the other topic that we did want to address, which I know some of our listeners are interested in and following, is the topic of Meghan and Harry. Which is, I don't know, really surprising. Are they just spoilt brats? What's the position in terms of racism in the royal family? I mean, if you'd asked me 20 years ago, is the royal family racist? I think I probably would have said, well, yes, of course it's racist. Because it stands at the head of, a Commonwealth, but a former empire, which was precisely there to reinforce white rule over most of the rest of the world, particularly most of the rest of the world that had resources which could be appropriated. So it's a bit of a surprise, really, that people hadn't realised that. I mean, maybe yes, we should. There's always two sides to difficulties like this in society, I suppose. There's the question of racism. Is it just, were the royal family actually showing racism? To which the answer is, well, probably. It's quite difficult as a long-established white ruling class to be in tune with modern day thinking, I'm sure. But what about, even if we accept that there was racism and there are lessons to be learnt, what about the class attitude towards the royal family? I find it very hard to have much sympathy for people who, I find it, let's put it the other way, I find it easy to have sympathy for people who feel that they're being oppressed, they're being put down, that they're being treated badly. Yeah, and people who feel that so badly they've got to escape, I have sympathy with that. But then if they run away to a 12-bedroom mansion, most of our people here in East London don't have that option. If we've got to get out of a dangerous situation, we don't have a 12-bedroom mansion on hand to run to. We don't have the capacity to get a £7.95 million mortgage to pay for our safety. That all seems really quite excessive. Ring it. I haven't got a guest for a moment, so you'll get a chance to ring in and talk to me if you'd like to. 0208 1234507. That's the number to call. It's on the screen. So if you think I'm being unjust and unfair to Meghan and Harry, then give us a call and say why you think I should be a lot more sympathetic than I am. I guess if your income is going to depend on the media and your ability to sell yourself to the media, as opposed to your ability to go out and do a day's work, even if that work is only opening a few fates, or if you feel cut off from your family's wealth that they robbed from other countries over the preceding centuries. So I suppose if you depend on the media, if that's your only place you can get an income to fund your £7.95 million mortgage, I guess you probably need to make sure the media stays interested in you. So if you think that's not being very sympathetic, give us a call and tell me to be a bit nicer to them, or at least you can also put a comment on our Facebook page, where we have got and Piers Morgan. I haven't caught up really with what happened to Piers Morgan, so do ring in and let me know what happened. I know he's resigned or been pushed. Talha, you're back with us.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can actually on this occasion. Good, and you're not even clicking. So I've just been wishing on a bit about Harry and saying I'm not really that sympathetic, to be honest.
You're not?
I'm not. No. What do you think? Do you think he's got a case? Do you think we should be nicer to him?
I don't know. I can't really make my mind on it. I think the response that's come out of Buckingham Palace has been quite amicable, dignified. I think that's probably how it should have been dealt with in the first place. You know, I'm of the opinion that, you know, it should have been dealt in house. I don't like sort of dirty laundry being, you know, aired outside and people knowing and it becoming a big issue. But who knows? Maybe the situation and the feelings got so bad in Meghan's case. You know, she said she felt suicidal. So if that is, you know, a genuine claim, you know, some people are disputing that, then it is quite a serious allegation and feeling, I guess. So I don't know what to make of it, Jenny. It's
Yeah. Well, I suppose if you're feeling so bad, you're feeling suicidal. The point I was making was, okay, sometimes then you have to leave for the sake of your own health and well-being. But most of us don't have the option of leaving for a 12-bedroom mansion. That's
true.
the point. I don't know if there are any women's refuges in Tower Hamlets, but I mean, most of us, you know, we can only go on the council house waiting list if we're actually in a priority group, and then we can, you know, then we can be put in only temporary accommodation quite often, or so. It seems whichever way you turn, the royals just get it so much easier than the rest of us. What about security? Do you think we should acknowledge the fact that of the family they were born into and give them some and pay
It
for their
seems a bit
security?
harsh, doesn't it? But then equally, there's been quite a few cases, or quite a few princesses, or sort of other people within the royal family, basically, that have not got it anymore. So I don't know. I can see the argument for them getting it by the virtue of being part of that family. But equally, I know the security sort of provisions have been stripped from some of them, right? So I don't know. It's a sticky one.
It'd be interesting to see what it's like, how we feel in 10 years' time. We'll probably have another referendum on our hands. We'll probably having another.
Talking about Harry and Meghan.
The 10-year documentary, yeah. Okay, so we're getting comments. Shah, Hock, you are commenting like a good one on our Facebook page. You're saying you think the royal family business is public business because we pay for their upkeep, which indeed we do.
True.
So, but
I just think the dealing of it should have been done in a more dignified way rather than, you know, going on media, airing it to the whole world. I do understand, like, if it got that bad, then, you know, there was a need for them to do that. But equally, if it could have been sorted in-house.
Well, if it was an elected politician and you found that they were being racist, if it was somebody whistleblowing on, you know, a senior politician who was elected, the prime minister or another minister. Well, in fact, that's what did happen, wasn't it? I mean, there was a civil servant resigned, claiming they were whistleblowing on Priti Patel's behaviour, and you know, that's one thing, sort of, to go public and say enough is enough. But it's very blurred, isn't it? What's the difference? Where's the boundary of a family issue stop and become something that is actually public? Because what is a matter of public interest is not the same as what is a matter of interest to the public. That's what we have to remember. Oh, well, Silence Shah Amin says that it's important that we know what's going on inside the royal family. So he's glad, I think, that they spoke out. So there we are. Let's go back to the directly elected mayor. We were just looking before we went away at the issue of the leader plus cabinet, and you were saying, you know, the trouble with that is the leader is then elected by the councillors. But doesn't that really make sense? Because people sort of vote for a political party, don't they? So if they get the whole package, does it really matter who the leader is? If the cabinet is sharing power, the leader's only one person among the cabinet. So why does it matter that they have to share power like that?
Sure, I think naturally this is probably just my opinion, but I feel it's the opinion of other people. Decision makers should feel accountable to, or you should be able to contribute towards the selection of decision makers. And yes, you're probably contributing towards councillors, but then essentially when the leader's making the decision, you'd feel like you want to be involved in selecting that leader. And I felt that's what the majority of people feel that I speak to. They want to be involved in selecting who's, managing or heavily involved in deciding where the £1.2 billion budget is spent. And, people want to be involved in that process. And yeah, you're right. You vote for your councillor, the majority party would select a leader. But I think what's the best example that I can give? Similar to that. It's just you want to be involved in selecting the main person. I think a lot of people that I speak to feel that that's their right. And they feel it's more of a democratic process than handing over that power to councillors.
I can see that the mayor plus cabinet can work better for the council because you've got the leader plus cabinet. You've got one person who's in charge of leading all the other cabinet members, but you've got all these different cabinet members in charge of their particular portfolio. So all the officers who work in that service, they've got one person in charge of that area, schools or health or adults or children, whatever it is, that they can go to and do the business with. But then immediately you think two things. You think, well, that means that all the cabinet members, each of them is sort of like picked off or can be picked off. If you've got forceful officers, they can be selective with what they say to that cabinet member. If the cabinet member is new to the council or new to that topic, are they going to be able to come in and say, well, actually, that's not what I wanted. That's the problem. And the other thing, of course, is, well, who chooses the cabinet members? And that's another sort of big question, really. It's not just about who chooses the leader. Okay, the cabinet councillors do collectively. Who chooses the cabinet members? And there again, sometimes there's been criticism of the post-directly elected mayor because that elected mayor can award cabinet places to their supporters, which helps keep them in line. But the leader as well, can award. We've all seen that going on before, where, the leadership candidates have gone around and say, oh, if you vote for me, then I'll be looking for a cabinet member and you'll be up for a post.
Yeah.
So let me try one question on you to see what you know. I'm not trying to catch you out, but do you know what cabinet members are paid?
So on top of the basic, I'm guessing, but I don't 100% know. But are you talking about now or in the previous system?
No, now.
I'm guessing they're paid between 25 to 30 grand.
Yeah, so do I. I don't know either.
All right, sorry. I thought you knew and you're testing me.
I feel I should know. I seem to remember hearing that cabinet members were going to get 30,000, and that was in addition to the £10,000 flat rate.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to work out at the average wage in Tower Hamlets-ish. So they're supposed to be being paid just a reasonable amount of time, given that they have to spend time, they reckon, 3 days a week to do a cabinet post.
Wow. And that was increased at the last term, wasn't it? And I think the deputy mayor, there's two, I believe now, and their sort of allowance was increased during the same time. So I think within the last 4 years or so, I think the salaries have also gone up, or allowances, and that's obviously come through a decision, I believe, from the directly elected mayor. So.
Yes, because I remember the first council meeting after the first mayor was elected. The then Labour group leader, one of the first things he did was to stand up and say that although they thought about how much the mayor should be paid very carefully over a long time, they've now suddenly realised the mayor should be paid £10,000 less.
Too much.
Yeah. And so one of the first things Labour did when the directly elected mayor was elected, and it wasn't them, was to reduce their salary by £10,000. So salaries can go down as well as up, it seems.
Yeah, it felt quite ironic that, as soon as sort of that person went in, people felt the position was paying too much. But then fast forward a couple of years, you feel the position's getting paid too less.
Mm.
So yeah, it seems like a little merry-go-round sometimes, a little circus.
Well, I remember the first mayor's response was just, "You can cut the money if you want, Josh." That was the Labour Group leader. I'm not in it for the money. So I think that fell a bit flat, really. Okay, so this is the other thing that worries me, is that if the mayor is selected by the councillors, or if the leader is selected by the councillors, chosen by the councillors, there can be a bit of trade-off. But also, who selects the councillors? And
The cabinet, do you mean?
no, the councillors.
The councillors, okay.
Yeah, because if the councillors are on a party ticket, which is probably a good thing, because then you know their manifesto, you think.
Yeah.
Although I think the current system, a lot of the biggest things the council's been doing have not actually been in the manifesto. But the Labour Party is well known for having issues over who selects candidates, isn't it? And I know sometimes the population in Tower Hamlets has felt a bit iffy about supporting people who've been selected by people sat down in Labour Party headquarters who don't actually know anything about the East End. So maybe that's an issue. What do you think we should do about that? Should we put pressure on Labour to have local selections?
I'm not exactly sure what the process is. I guess Labour selection process. Maybe you can sort of enlighten me on that. But it should, I guess, come from sort of local, not demands, but sort of local interests, and that's my opinion. I think one of the reasons why I stood for elections is because the local people I felt wanted me. So there was a lot of organisations and individuals approaching me and saying, "I think you should, stand for elections." And I felt that's quite a nice way to represent the people rather than, jumping on a party ticket. Albeit, there are obviously benefits to that as well. And I just felt it feels more authentic, when it's locally driven. And you feel more representative. And it's maybe something that the Labour Party unfortunately have missed. I'm unfortunately not privy to the selection process, but if that's not considered as part of that process, then I think it should.
Well, that's something that I think the Labour Party selection process is quite public. The party nationally has a position that if you want to be a candidate, a Labour Party candidate with a Labour Party rosette, then your local members will select which of those people they will actually stand and award the Labour Party ticket to. I think it's actually in the national publicity for the Labour Party. Joining the Labour Party, one of the things you'll be able to do is to select your candidates for local elections. But that's not always been the case in Tower Hamlets. I think since I think it was 1994, that's how the system worked in Tower Hamlets. But in subsequent years, the London region, and I think this is a public fact, publicly known, decided to intervene. There were questions over the membership in Tower Hamlets and whether they were competent to select their candidates. And the London region thought it was better that they either give local members a list of candidates to choose from, or just choose the candidates direct themselves, which people I think felt, so, and sometimes they've relented a bit. I know that throughout that period of time, there were open selections for parliamentary candidates, GLA candidates, the London mayor, European candidates, but always when councillor elections came round, there was also hesitancy, and the Labour Party felt it might have to supervise. So it's a bit different, isn't it? If local people genuinely were electing Labour councillors, and the councillors then just sort of met and said, right, which of us has been elected, who's going to be the best leader? I think that's the scenario that's written in the handbook. But it's not the scenario that happens.
It's not in practice, isn't it? As in the reality is quite different. And just speaking to sort of people around Tower Hamlets, some people feel very disconnected with politics at the moment, or it could have been over the past however many years, because they don't feel the people that are in power represent them, or have been locally sort of supported or driven to that position. But then when you put forward the paradigm or the example that it's the local members who, you know, select the candidate, like you said, textbook wise, it should make one feel that they were the local choice. I don't know. It's just when you speak to people, it's far from the truth.
And I think you are going around doing some campaigning, aren't you, for keeping the elected mayor? Because that is the choice that we're going to get on the ballot paper, whether to keep the directly elected mayor or to go for this leader plus cabinet, you know, the party political ticket model.
Yeah.
What's the key arguments you're giving people, and what are they saying back?
I think what I'm doing is I'm speaking to people that I came across during my campaigns, during my sort of election campaigns, and speaking to them. I guess I start off by asking about their current situation. You know, COVID has hit a lot of us quite badly, whether it be the loss of loved ones, family members, jobs, and all sorts. And I think I've taken this opportunity to reach out to them and to speak to them, which I have been doing over the past year. And naturally, people ask because of the relationship that I have with a lot of these people. They know me as their candidate from 2018, so they naturally ask, "So what's going on with politics?" And that's when we start talking about the referendum. And a lot of people, you'd be surprised, are not aware that there's a referendum taking place.
Really?
So whether it be COVID or the lack of correspondence or whatever it is, awareness, in the community, people just aren't aware. I think slowly so people reaching out to various different residents, whether it be through sort of political parties or local organisations, people are slowly becoming aware. But I think the vast majority of people that I've spoken to, I've sort of echoed their sentiments early on in the conversation, where they feel they need to have the right to vote for who the mayor is. They would like to be involved in deciding, voting a name on a ballot paper, rather than voting for a councillor and allowing the councillor to vote for the mayor. They also feel that the system, the leader plus cabinet, it takes longer for things to be done. It's more of a culture of you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. And they feel that, by selecting the mayor themselves, they can see what the mayor's doing. The mayor's accountable to them. And if the mayor's doing a bad job, get rid of him in 4 years. They feel they have the power in their hands. And that's what, to be honest, honestly, that's what the majority of people that I've spoken to have told me. And I guess my only fear is, I think there is a really strong support to retain the mayoralty, but it's whether people will come out or not. For Muslims, it falls in the month of Ramadan, so it's a consideration. People are going to be tired, and the fact that most people are still stuck indoors or working from home, the lack of sort of, the election buzz that you get, the referendum buzz that you get, you're not really feeling it sat indoors. You get the odd message come through WhatsApp, and you're like, oh, there's a referendum happening on May the 6th. But if you're working to work on that day, you'd have sort of canvassers along your path to work, by the tube station, and it's like a field day into Hamlets. It's like a celebration, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I quite like it that way, but it's just May the 6th won't be like that, for obvious reasons. And I think the turnout could be an issue.
I mean, certainly, yeah. I've found that I've not really come across any publicity that says vote in the referendum to overturn the directly elected mayor, to go back to having a leader plus, well, to adopt leader plus cabinet model. I've not seen any publicity for that myself.
Neither have I.
And just today, there was a couple of pictures doing the circuit on the social media saying vote to keep the directly elected mayor. So that side is obviously G'ing up a bit. So I don't know, maybe the Labour Party side is just working very quietly. The people you talk to, I mean, do they sort of say, oh, brilliant, we're going to be able to go out and vote for Sadiq Khan? Does that name come up very much do people see it as an opportunity to keep a Labour London mayor? I don't know if they're talking to you about that.
The ones I have spoken to, they feel he is the best choice. They don't feel that his competitors offer something different, not different, but as in like so much better. They have obviously questioned quite a lot of his policies, but you'd get that with sort of any position in any person in power. You know, there's things that some people will like, and there's things that some people won't. And I think in his case, the people that I've spoken to have felt that his good has outweighed his bad. So that's
Maybe
just a feeling that I've got from people I've spoken to.
Maybe there's just no alternative. I mean, I always think of Sadiq Khan as the man who drove that dual carriageway through Fish Island in Bow, which I don't think did the people of Bow any good or their air quality, to be honest.
No.
I mean, actually, even John Biggs was against that road coming through Fish Island. So
Yeah.
that was generally the case in town. But there we are, another met, through it came. And I think he did give some of the schools in Commercial Road quite good air quality sensors. So I think, that's obviously a good thing. But then again, you think, well, who else is there? Must be a Tory candidate. I haven't actually noticed one. But there must be one. But,
yeah, there is a Tory candidate. It's Sean something. What was his name? Just had a mind blank there. But I think he was offering.
I mean,
Sorry.
The Tories don't generally get a high vote across Tower Hamlets, do they? I think even they as a party realise that. I think it was the Lansbury by-election in the 80s or 90s, I can't now remember. They got 24 votes, which I think was the lowest vote the Conservative Party had ever got in a by-election. Maybe they've done worse since, I don't know. But it's generally not been their best territory. I think
it is generally quite a Labour borough. Even I guess over the past 10 years, when you've had splits within the Labour Party and then sort of splits within the splits, it's still generally been a Labour borough. So
it's almost like we take our political spectrum and invest it all in the Labour Party, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than having different political parties to choose from. I think there are some independent candidates for London Mayor. I've seen a couple of press releases come through, but I can't say I've particularly warmed to any of them. So
it's interesting. I think when I've spoken to people, whether it be the local referendum, I did mention that some people weren't aware. Equally, a lot of people weren't aware that there was GLA elections taking place on the same day.
Yeah.
So some people, I think, are just unaware that all of this is going on because of obviously, the obvious situation around us.
Well, that's it. I mean, I've got mixed feelings about the GLA candidates because I remember in previous elections going to hustings and your Greater London Assembly GLA candidates would always say, when I'm elected to the GLA, I'm going to do this for the people. I'm going to do that for the people. And your question would have to be, how are you going to do this when you sit on an assembly that has no power whatsoever? And that sort of deflated quite a few candidates. It doesn't. It's an advisory body that advises the London Mayor. And perhaps that's quite a parallel with what's going on in Tower Hamlets. If you have, an elected mayor, actually they take a lot of the decisions. And the GLA it's been just advisory. They should be campaigning and highlighting issues and getting the people together. And some of the members do that a bit. But I think a lot of the time they're just supernumerary pontificators, really. Some of them. If you look at the GLA as a whole, I'm not talking about City and East.
Yeah.
Here. So, and it's possibly the same thing in Tower Hamlets. I mean, it may be the COVID situation, but I'm getting a lot of feedback in East London News that people are just not really coming across their councillors, not really seeing their councillors. There's very few people come along and say, oh, this councillor is a really good councillor. I went to see them about X, Y, or Z, and they really got back to me on an issue. I mean, you're up at the other end of the borough from me. I'm in the southeast, you're in the northwest. Do people talk much about their local councillors there? Or obviously, surgeries haven't been held for a year, so we've lost that opportunity to see our
Yeah.
councillors regularly.
I
But
think
without,
before the pandemic, you know what, it sounds like, years ago that normal life was with us. But you sort of rewind a year and a half. I think I'm talking about my own borough, sorry, my own constituency. I did used to see my councillor. He's walking along sort of Spitalfields. I did used to see him. But I know in some other boroughs, for example, the borough that I stood in, people are complaining that they don't see their councillors. And obviously, COVID has possibly been a good excuse for some of them to say, yeah, because of social distancing and COVID, we've not been about. But yeah, I'm sure I've got residents who call me then, and I've sort of spoken about it more recently, that since the last election, they've not seen their councillors. I don't know. I just think some councillors, I'd love to mention his name. I don't know if I can, but on the island, are doing an amazing work. And, during COVID, I think it was the best time for activists and sort of campaigners and politicians, to support people, to help people. And I know one particular person on the island, he was handing out meals with his team to vulnerable people. And I think it would have been a good time for councillors to come out.
Well, of course, we did have mixed feelings on that because, I mean, during lockdown, we are supposed to be staying at home.
That's right.
And only coming out for that very small number of reasons. So I think I've been quite in favour of our councillors staying indoors. I've been staying indoors for a long time. And I'm just beginning to notice that sort of creeping back. Where I live on my landing, there's like a little recess. And it's, to be honest, it's an area where a lot of young people sometimes congregate because there's room to stand there, which is fine. And you hear a bit of chattering going on. And sometimes I have to go out and say, boys, you do realise I can hear every word you're saying. You might want to turn it down a bit. And I think that's the same throughout our estate. It's a friendly estate, I mean, people don't get sniffy. And throughout the last lockdown, they've not been there. So they've obviously been stuck indoors. Good. But they're just beginning to creep back, and lockdown isn't over yet. Yeah. So, schools are back, but we can't carry on grouping together in
generally speaking, I do support what you're saying. Obviously, if the government's telling us to stay indoors, we should be staying indoors. But you've got sort of local organisations supporting vulnerable people that have no help. I think, some of the people that local organisations have been supporting have absolutely no one.
That's right.
And getting a meal, whether it be some fruits or whether it be a hot meal or a ready meal, it's doing not only their sort of mental health any good, like the physical health a lot of good as well. And I know in certain communities, I know the Asian community, we're quite tight knit, and we would support one another quite naturally.
Well, I mean, you may not have been listening to what I was saying last week, which was on the island where 20 years ago there was a great deal of hostility to the Asian community. They were newcomers in the early 80s, 1986 onwards. They were vilified. There were a lot of attacks as the first non-whites moved onto the island, or the first Asians moved onto the island. And there was a lot of division in the community. And now it's the Asian community organisations, generalisation, but it is, that are coming together and helping the community. Do you know what? They are helping the whole community. And when you get the photographs, and I get the photographs in from the weekly, whether it's a food parcel distribution or the meals distribution, the photos are of elderly people, a lot of non-Asian people. The photos are, from people I know. The distribution goes to all the schools, not just to the madrasas or the after-school clubs or stuff like that. And it's wonderful to see that this Asian community that was so put upon, so hurt, has turned things around, and it's now the pillar of the whole, community, or at least, I don't know what I'd call the normal community rather than the rich people who, to be honest, we don't really go out and help a great deal.
No,
I don't
it's
think.
definitely a beautiful turn of events, and I think what you've touched on there is what I was going to finish my line with: the fact that the Asian community are quite tight knit, but in other communities it may not be so sort of what's the word, as supportive of families or elders. And I think what we're seeing in these reports and pictures that are coming out, you've got a lot of elderly, you've got a lot of people, like you said, that are non-Asian, being supported, and they don't have much people or much family to support them for one reason or another. And that's quite nice to hear that they're being supported. Albeit, we should be at home and we should follow the government guidelines, but where you can, support local residents. I think they're doing a tremendous job.
Well, I think that is within the guidelines that that's one of the reasons you are allowed out, is to give direct support, in community initiatives, work, exercise, helping vulnerable people, and going to a medical appointment. I think that was it. I'm just looking through the comments. Johanna, it's lovely to see your comment. Ring in next time. Johanna is trying to balance me a bit and to be a little bit more understanding of the royals, but also a little sceptical about politicians on occasion. And we do need to be more aware of what's going on. So I think we're probably at the end of our time now. I'll just very quickly run through a couple of things happening in the area. There has been a great success within Tower Hamlets, at least, for residents, which perhaps backs up what you're saying, Talha, with the Tower Hamlets libraries. There's been the council considered, obviously when the lockdown came, they were all closed, and then the council considered whether to reopen them or just open the idea stores, and 2 libraries were under threat. And there's been such good community campaigns, the council has revised its decision. And so the big headline from the council in Tower Hamlets is Tower Hamlets libraries are staying open. Brilliant. Which is great. Yeah, it just shows how, as you're saying, when you campaign and politicians listen, you get a good result. But I think I just want to urge a little caution, because one of not my local councillor, but one of the councillors in Tower Hamlets was saying that the library may be staying open, but it's going to have its hours cut. And I think that can sometimes be the first step to say, oh, well, actually, nobody's using it. So although we kept it open, it wasn't worth it. So let's all flock in there, and as soon as we can, and make sure we keep our libraries open. It's footfall measures were important. And in Hackney, which of course a lot of people will drive through, because the schools are open, they're starting their school streets initiative again, which I think may mean that some of the streets around the schools are closed off to traffic, which will probably displace the traffic onto the main streets, which might mean traffic delays in Hackney. So just be aware that may be happening. Newham Council is doing where of course there's also a mayoral referendum on the 6th of May. Their current mayor has spoken out against the national government's budget. They're pushing people to stop smoking this year. Apparently, the 10th of March. Have we had that yet? That's tomorrow, isn't it? Tomorrow is National No Smoking Day, which I suppose is a good thing. As somebody who struggled, as most people who know me are aware, for several years with smoking, I must say it really is very, very difficult not only to stop smoking, much harder not to start again, and it's very hard to function without smoking when you've been a heavy smoker for 30 years. So I think we have to put a lot of effort into persuading people not to start. And they're also investigating, they're they found some illegal puppy trading going on in Newham. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
obviously, yeah.
Where's this in Newham?
Yeah. So that's something for those residents to follow up. Barking Dagenham is got a big headline telling people how to report their neighbours if they're breaking COVID rules. And Redbridge's, I can never work out Redbridge's website and where their news is on it. But I think essentially they're reminding the population that the national lockdown rules remain. Although the lockdown is being eased, it's not over, so it goes back to what we were saying before. Okay, well, we had a little chat, despite a few technical issues. We had a little chat around the mayor and some of the pros and cons. We've had a little chat about Harry and Meghan. Neither of us have particularly got loads to say on that. The jury's probably out. So I hope we've kept our listeners at least a little bit entertained, even if it wasn't as entertaining as last night's interview on the telly, on the proper telly. And maybe tell how you'll come back and join us again another time. And we can have a few more roundtable discussions now that we've got the technical side sorted out about some of the things affecting people in the borough. It's very nice to have this mix between E14 and E1 and give a whole borough perspective.
I loved it, Jenny. It's been a pleasure. Speaking about Harry and Meghan and our mayoral system. You won't get me walking out like Piers Morgan did today.
Okay.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed our session. So
me too.
Forward to seeing you again.
Well, we've not spoken for a while, but I always enjoyed talking to you in the past when our paths used to cross a little more often. So hopefully we'll come back and we'll have some more three-way and four-way discussions on some of the topics affecting people in Tower Hamlets as we go towards that May the 6th election. So with that, that's it from us for tonight. We'll see you again next week, dear viewer, with new guests and a new topic on the Tuesday show. So see you again in a week's time. Good night.